Whew. Okay, let's see how it turned out. You know, that's not that bad. Like, it worked. It worked, don't get me wrong, but that's not that bad. All right, it's hardened. It states a file. It's warped, but it's not that bad. It's just warped like one way. It's not twisted or anything, so I should be able to take that out. I ground the sides a little bit so that I can see the temper colors, got them shiny, and now I have to temper it. The question remains how I'm going to do that, because normally I do that in the oven. This obviously isn't going to fit in the oven. So I'm thinking barbecue. So we've got this guy heat treated, we've got it tempered, it's ground most of the way. So now we're just going to finish up all the bevels, all of the finished grinding, and we're gonna go ahead and fit up the guard. So let's do that. So what I've done now is I've applied marking fluid to the tang. I don't know if you can see that, but it's blue. And what that'll enable me to do is when I hammer on the guard, I'll be able to see where it rubs off here, and then I'll know where I need to remove material. So I don't know if you can see that, but there is a little shiny spot here and a corresponding spot on the other side. So that's where I have to remove more material from the guard. So I ground these triangles here, and the idea is that I'm going to put them on the guard like this, because in the picture the guard swept up onto the blade more, but when I was actually forging the guard, this is the eBay Damascus, right? So when I tried to forge it up onto the blade, it started cracking, because of course it did. So I'm going to just use these pieces of steel as sort of spacers, and I'm just going to weld them on to the guard. Now, they're not Damascus like the actual guard material is, so they won't have a pattern when I etch it. So what I want to do is, probably on one of these, I'll stamp my maker's mark, and on the other, I'm going to try to paint some sort of symbol on there, and then etch it. So I'm thinking maybe like the chaos symbol from like Warhammer. That would, I think, go really well with the look here, so we'll make it like a feature instead of a flaw, right? We'll use it as a canvas to put something. At least that's the plan. We'll see how the welding goes. So I've got kind of a spattery weld on there now, but it looks like it'll hold fine. I should be able to grind it flush now and have something clean. You know, I'm not great at welding, I'll admit, but at least I'm consistent. Of course, you can never ever claim to be good at welding because welders are like the meanest people on the internet for some reason. You'll make a table and go, hey, I'm really proud of this, look at this. And some guy called like Cletus Buster Merle Jr., who's been working since he was 12, will teleport behind you and tell you you suck. Boy, my dog could run a better bead than that. So we've run into a problem, which is that I'm stupid. Without really thinking about this much, I just decided to just weld these two parts on, and I thought I wanted them to be thinner than the guard because they would sit against the blade better, I guess. And now that I look at it, there's like a shelf or like material gap, and I'm not going to be able to really grind out smoothly. So I guess I'll just redo this real quick. Okay, I have two new triangles cut. Just believe me, there's two of these. I swear I ran into a hard spot on that second bar. It just wouldn't go. I haven't heat treated these. That was weird. Round two. So here's the situation. This is going to be kind of stop and go making this thing because it's just, there's a lot going on. So I welded these on, of course, like I was going to. Thing is, when you heat things up like this, they do weird things. So they ended up flaring out, which I didn't want after I welded them. And I just figured I'd deal with that later because no matter what, when I ground the welds back, because this was so proud, I knew that I'd end up basically removing the welds. I just needed them to hold this in place, which is why I welded the sides here. So I went ahead once this was ground down and I pinched this shut. So I have cracked the weld now, which I basically knew would happen. That's okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just carve a little channel because this is still going to be retained here. And then I'm going to fill that back up with weld. That should then make this pretty solid. So I need to get the Dremel and do that, and then we can do the final like grinding of this, and we should finally be done with the guard. I hope. So we have the dart fit up to the blade. There's a couple ugly spots, but I don't think they'll show that much in the finished product. Fits nicely, not a lot of wiggle. The blade is basically ground to its final everything. The edge is sharp. It'll need to be sanded and everything still. This is always that bit of the project where all the features are there that you want to be there, and you start to have this lofty image in your head of, I'm almost done. I am not almost done. Not even close. This still has to be sanded, sandblasted, a finish applied, any little wonkiness in the edge taken out, a handle installed. But, you know, for a moment you hold that thing in your head of, I'm almost done. So the reason I chose this for my first sword, having never made one before, I don't have a lot of the tools, I don't have a lot of the experience. I knew things would be crooked and kind of a little messed up, despite my best efforts. So I chose this design because it would sort of benefit from that, right? It's this sort of organic, evil sort of thing happening here. And I thought that would, you know, if it's a little crooked, it doesn't matter that much. Whereas if you make like a, you know, a broadsword, some like knightly broadsword, and the bevel's crooked, it's just gonna look awful, right? Whereas with this, you try to make it perfect, obviously, but you won't, because you don't have necessarily the milling machine and all the stuff that would really help you get perfect slots and perfect angles on everything. So that's why I'm doing this. You know, it'll look cool no matter what, almost. My Dremel's broken. It only has 2 speeds, just on and off. Like it has this like variable speed dial, but it just on off. Full speed, not, you know, just goes full speed. It's the Roadrunner. Anyway, so I'm using that to polish these serrations here. Trouble with working on a sword or just things of this nature, this size, is everywhere you go there's just a sharp thing. You gotta reach for something. Ow, you know, there's another one. It's brutal. So we have a bit of an issue. Some of the scratches from the initial grinding made it up here. I tried to forge them out hot so that I wouldn't have to deal with them later, but some of them are being revealed as I sand this. So I can't obviously, you know, hammer it again. It's forged, it's heat treated, right? So I'm gonna have to play around with that maybe. I'm gonna see if I can kind of glue it and etch it and make them not be super visible. If they are, what I'll have to do is I'll have to get a carbide burr and probably get a die grinder and just clean up this texture with that, and then darken it again with probably cold blue, and that'll make the problem go away. But we'll see what we have to do here. So that's it. The guard's finally done. That was a lot of work. So it's etched, it's coffee darkened. I blued this extension area here because otherwise it was gray and it looked weird. It still kind of looks weird. You can clearly see it. You can clearly see that it's a piece of steel that's been welded on. There's a clear line, which I knew there would be, but I think it looks kind of cool. You know, this is the situation we were in, and I think it's neat. So I think it suits the whole vibe of a thing that was made in hell. So there we go. Guard finished. All that's left is to throw some heavy cutting oil on there so that this thing doesn't rust while I'm not paying attention. And that's it. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 4.